History books tell us one story, but what if they're missing entire chapters? Scattered across the globe are artifacts that shatter conventional timelines and challenge our understanding of where we came from. Prepare to be astonished by objects that defy explanation, that whisper of advanced technologies and extraterrestrial origins. The evidence is undeniable. We're not alone.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Ed Gein's cauldron. Ed Gein's cauldron is a cast iron pot that was found on the property of the infamous serial killer Ed Gein. Gein was known for his gruesome crimes in the 1950s, and when police searched his property, they discovered not only the remains of his victims, but also various macabre artifacts made from human bones and skin. Among these items was the cauldron, which Gein allegedly used to hold body parts during his gruesome acts. After Gein's arrest, the cauldron was kept as evidence for several years before being returned to his family. However, it is said that the cauldron is cursed and has brought misfortune to anyone who has possessed it. According to legend, a man who bought the cauldron in the 1960s met a very quick and horrible demise shortly afterward, and another owner reportedly suffered from a series of tragic accidents. Today, the cauldron's whereabouts are unknown, and it remains a mysterious and haunting artifact associated with one of America's most notorious criminals. In our number 9 spot today, we have John Murrell's thumb. John Murrell's thumb is a small, shriveled digit that is believed to have belonged to John Murrell, a notorious American criminal who lived during the 19th century. The digit is said to possess a powerful curse and is associated with various tales of hauntings and misfortune. One of the most popular legends surrounding the thumb is that it is cursed to bring bad luck to anyone who possesses it. According to the legend, the thumb was cut off from Murrell's body after his execution and passed down through a series of owners who all experienced misfortune and tragedy. It is said that the thumb would cause accidents, sickness, and even death to those who kept it in their possession. Another tale tells of a man who came into possession of the thumb and began experiencing strange occurrences, such as objects moving on their own and eerie whispers in the night. The man eventually became so terrified that he buried the thumb in a field, but it is said that the haunting continued even afterwards. Despite its ominous reputation, John Murrell's thumb has been sought after by collectors and paranormal enthusiasts over the years. Some even believe that the thumb possesses a sort of supernatural power that can be harnessed for personal gain. However, most people are content to leave the thumb where it belongs and avoid any potential consequences of disturbing its resting place. In our number 8 spot today, we have Old Nick. Old Nick, also known as the Swansea Devil, is a legendary figure that dates back to the 1890s and currently resides in the Swansea Museum. During that time, the prestigious St. Mary's Church, located in the town's center, was undergoing renovations, and when a local builder was turned down for the job, he sought revenge. He purchased a row of cottages adjacent to the church, demolished them, and built large brick offices, topping them with a carving of Old Nick. According to legend, he placed a curse on the church himself, declaring that this devil would remain laughing after its destruction. Years later, during World War II, the town was heavily bombed and St. Mary's, along with most of the town, was destroyed. However, the office building with Old Nick remained undamaged. After the war, Old Nick disappeared, but later resurfaced, prompting a petition to return him to his former spot, and also a counter petition to keep him far away from the rebuilt church. Currently, Old Nick resides behind glass in the Swansea Museum, and it is said that the glass enclosure is for the protection of visitors. In our number 7 spot today, we have Charles Manson's TV. There are many haunting tales surrounding this TV, and honestly, that makes a lot of sense considering its history, as it was the one that was present in the Spawn Ranch where Manson and his followers resided for a period of time. This ranch was a former movie ranch that had fallen into disrepair and was used as a hideout by the Manson family. It was during their time at the ranch that they planned and carried out their atrocious crimes. The TV was present in the living quarters at the ranch and was said to have played a significant role in Manson's ability to manipulate and control his followers. Manson would often use the TV as a tool to brainwash and indoctrinate his followers with apocalyptic visions and very harmful ideologies. The TV was seized as evidence by the police following the arrest of the Manson family members and has since been sold at auction. The exact whereabouts of the TV at this point in time are unknown, but many have said that the TV is cursed by the evil energy that Manson himself held. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Atlantis Ring. The Atlantis Ring is a clay ring discovered in 1860 in an Egyptian high priest's tomb in the Valley of Kings. Howard Carter acquired the ring and kept it until his his death in 1939. The ring is believed to be over 5,000 years old and is decorated with very unique geometric symbols not seen before in Egyptian culture. What makes this story so intriguing is that Carter, who discovered King Tut's tomb, claimed to have worn the ring as a talisman during the tomb's opening, which protected him from the curse. Unlike other members of his team, he did not die a mysterious death afterward. Instead, he attributed his protection to the ring's power. So I guess the ring is kind of like an anti-cursed object due to its association with the protection of Howard Carter. Although replicas are available, none are believed to possess the power of the original Atlantis ring. In our number 5 spot today, we have Bela Lugosi's mirror. Bela Lugosi, the actor who famously portrayed Dracula on screen, owned a mirror that is said to be cursed. According to legend, the mirror was given to Lugosi by a fan who claimed that it was possessed by the spirit of a dead woman. Lugosi allegedly experienced strange occurrences after acquiring the mirror, including seeing the reflection of the woman's face in the glass. He tried to get rid of the mirror, but it reportedly kept returning to him. After his death, the mirror passed through the hands of several owners who also reported strange phenomena associated with it, such as cold spots and apparitions. Some even claimed to have seen Lugosi's face staring back at them from the mirror. Today, the whereabouts of the mirror are unknown, and it remains one of the most mysterious and haunted objects in Hollywood history. In our number 4 spot today, we have Uluru Rock. Uluru Rock is a massive sandstone formation located in the southern part of the Northern Territory in Australia. It is a sacred site for the indigenous people of the area, and it is known as Ayers Rock. Visitors are advised not to take anything from the site as it is considered disrespectful and can bring bad karma. However, some people still choose to smuggle pieces of rock out of the area. This act has reportedly resulted in severe consequences, including bad luck, illness, and even the death of loved ones. The curse associated with these stolen rocks is so strong that it is common for the company that manages the tours of the formation to receive letters of apology with the returned rocks. This phenomenon happens so often that the company expects to receive at least one letter a day. While some may dismiss this as a mere coincidence, the frequency and consistency of these occurrences suggest otherwise. In our number 3 spot today, we have Natalie Wood's yacht. The haunting tales surrounding Natalie Wood's yacht, named the Splendor, have been the subject of speculation and controversy for decades. In November 1981, the actress was on a weekend trip aboard the yacht with her husband Robert Wagner and friend Christopher Walken. The circumstances surrounding her death have remained a mystery, but it is known that Wood drowned in the water near the yacht and her body was found the next morning. The yacht itself has been the subject of strange occurrences and haunting tales ever since. According to reports, strange noises and unexplained occurrences have been observed on board the yacht. Witnesses have reported hearing unexplained voices and footsteps, as well as doors opening and closing on their own. Some have even claimed to have seen the ghostly apparition of Natalie Wood herself, still wearing the same clothing she had on the night of her death. Despite the rumors and tales, there is no concrete evidence to support the idea that the yacht is actually haunted. However, the tragic circumstances surrounding Natalie Wood's death and the mysterious events that have been reported on the yacht have contributed to its reputation as a haunted vessel. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Screaming Skull. The Screaming Skull is housed in Burton Agnes Hall in England and is believed to have belonged to Catherine Ann Griffith. Catherine was the youngest in her family and enjoyed wandering the property, but on one such walk she was attacked and robbed by a group of individuals who left her severely injured. Despite being brought back to the hall, Catherine passed away a few days later. Before her death, she requested that her family remove her head and keep her skull so that they would always have a piece of her with them. Following her burial, the family experienced strange occurrences in the house, including bumps, moans, and screams. It was then said that they decided to fulfill Catherine's request and the strange happenings stopped. However, when a maid found the skull and threw it out of a nearby window, which is a strange thing to do when you find a skull, the strange occurrences began again. Eventually, the family decided to place the skull in a secret spot within the walls of the house so that Anne's spirit could rest in peace. The story serves as a reminder to honor the wishes of those who have passed to avoid any lingering spiritual activity. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Dark Mirror, finishing this list off with another cursed mirror. This one is now a part of the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult, and that in itself is enough to understand why it is considered to be a cursed object. The museum acquired the mirror from its previous owner, who had bought it from a psychic fair. Despite being created sometime around the 1820s or 1830s, the mirror still boasts a beautiful appearance, but it is believed to hold some dark secrets. The former owner reported that every time they looked into the mirror, they saw disturbing images that left them feeling very unsettled. Since joining the museum's collection, guests have also reported similar experiences, seeing reflections of their own dead bodies and other unsettling apparitions.
A Viking burial pit. A burial pit full of decapitated Vikings. So in 2009, during preparations for a new road in Ridgeway Hill, Dorset, archaeologists made a pretty gnarly discovery. It was a burial pit containing the decapitated remains of 54 young men. The bodies had been dumped in a shallow grave, with their heads stacked on one side. Whatever had happened here, whether it was a or a ritualistic sacrifice, it all went down around the year 1000, right around the time Vikings were constantly pestering Anglo-Saxons, violently, mind you, on the south coast of England. They also did isotope testing on the men's teeth, which showed they were from Scandinavia. The main theory is that these men had been Viking mercenaries. It didn't look like they'd been killed haphazardly though. Their wounds looked like they'd been made pretty clean and methodically, so there's a good chance they'd been rounded up and sent back to Odin at the hands of a sword through the neck. Next on the list, we have Viking bog bodies. For starters, what are bog bodies? Well, they're bodies that were buried in bogs. Well, what happens in this case is that they end up being preserved relatively well, similar to mummification, but they're incredibly creepy. The skin becomes pure black. They end up looking like raisin people. Now, bog bodies aren't unique to Viking Age Scandinavia. They've been around in different parts of Europe. But in the case of the Vikings, it looks like they buried some folks in bogs intentionally, possibly sacrificially or as a form of punishment. One story goes that King Harald Bluetooth of Denmark drowned the Norwegian queen Gunhild in a bog after tricking her into coming to Denmark with the promise of a marriage alliance. There have also been a number of Viking Age bog bodies found with pretty gnarly wounds, showing that they had pretty agonizing deaths, and some researchers have said that this could be evidence of this type of burial being reserved for terrible criminals or unhonorable members of society. Next on the list, we have another mass grave, but this one ups the ante. We don't just have 54 dead Vikings here, we have over 250, well, 264 to be exact. So much freakier. The grave was discovered in 1979 in Repton, England by a husband and wife team of archaeologists. It was a bunch of Viking graves. They were digging around a church and found a pile of bones that turned out to be from the time when the Vikings were causing complete chaos in England. This was a big deal because it confirmed that the Vikings had been there wreaking havoc, like they did. More recently, scientists did testing on the bones to figure out exactly how old they were. They found out that the bones matched up with the time when the Vikings were in Repton, just like the original archaeologists thought. What's really interesting about this find is that there was a discrepancy in the carbon dating for years. At first, the archaeologists thought these were Viking remains just by, seeing them. But when the bones were carbon dated, it looked like they were from well before the Viking Age. But they hadn't accounted for how much fish was in the Vikings' diet, which can throw off carbon dating, they've recently found. So it makes the bones seem older than they actually are. So it was recently found that these were indeed Vikings, though. The dig also turned up some other cool stuff, like Viking weapons and coins. Next, we have the remains from St. Brice's Day. In 2008, the remains of over 30 fighting age men were found buried in a mass grave during an excavation at St. John's College, Oxford. They were believed to be Danes, some of the victims of the St. Brice's Day. Pretty dark day in English history. It happened on November 13th in the year 1002. The King of England at the time, Athelred II, also known as Athelred the Unready, not because he was always late, but because he just wasn't great at ruling, a lot of people thought. Well, he got really worried about all the Vikings hanging around in England at the time. The story goes that he was told that the Danes were going to take his life and then take over his kingdom. So he handled things. He came up with a plan, just kill all of them. All the Danish people living in England. just like Frieza did with the Saiyans. And there were a fair number of Danish folks living in England at the time, so on that day, all across England, Danish men were attacked and killed. Next on the list, we have Andvari's Cursed Ring. So this thing is straight out of Norse mythology, so a bit different than most of the stuff on this list, but the story is pretty fascinating and strange, like a lot of ancient mythology is. So Andvari was a dwarf who lived under a waterfall. He also had the power to shapeshift into a fish, specifically a pike. He had this magical ring, the source of all his power and wealth. But Andvari, while in fish form, got trapped in the Norse god Loki's net. He'd been catching fish, but was pleasantly surprised when one of the fish turned into a dwarf and had a nice ring on one of his digits. Loki ended up swiping the ring from him. He needed the ring to pay off a debt after accidentally killing one of the dwarf king's sons, who'd taken on the form of an otter. Andvari then placed a curse on his ring, that whoever possessed it would be cursed with misfortune and ultimately meet a pretty grim fate. Well, Loki gave the ring to the dwarf king Hredmar to make amends, but it turned out that Andvari was also one of Hredmar's sons. Not knowing the ring was now cursed, tragedy befell pretty much his entire family. His sons became greedy for the ring and all met pretty grim fates once they got their hands on it. I'm summing things up, of course. This story would be the length of the entire video if I went into every detail, but this story probably does sound a bit familiar. Yes, it is one of the many pieces of ancient mythology that inspired Tolkien when writing Lord of the Rings. Next on the list, we have the Vale of York Hoard. This is a pretty cool artifact, or collection of artifacts, rather, that really encapsulates what Vikings were all about. Just traveling around and taking stuff. The artifacts were found in 2007 by a father and son using metal detectors. It was a gilt silver cup or pot, which is already a treasure in itself, but it contained more treasure, mostly coins, but there were also ornaments and bars of silver, jewelry, and the coolest part was that all of this stuff was from different parts of the world, mostly Europe, of course, but some of the items were from as far as Afghanistan. Like, Vikings, they live up to their name. They got around, and it's pretty amazing to see direct physical evidence of it with a collection like this. Now, were some of these items gifted to whoever this Viking was? Probably. They weren't like just pillaging and killing all the time like we've been mostly led to believe, but it's also pretty safe to say some of this stuff was taken by force or picked up after a raid. Next on the list, we have Viking teeth modifications. If you were like me, the dentist is one of the worst places you can be. Having stuff poking and prodding at your teeth it just hurts, and you're looking up at that light, and you feel like aliens are dissecting your body. It's just the worst. So imagine having lines and like shapes etched into your teeth. That would probably be pretty painful. But Vikings did it. It's not entirely clear why they'd modify their teeth, but we can speculate that it was to make them appear more fierce. Skeletal remains of ancient Norsemen have been dug up in Sweden and Denmark with horizontal grooves cut into their teeth. For the most part, they're just horizontal lines, but there have been other shapes found as well. Again, it's not 100% known why some of them did this, but it's said that maybe they dyed the grooves to create cool lines on their teeth, almost like tattoos. It would have been extremely painful again, and it wasn't super common, but it was definitely a bit of an ancient Swedish and Scandinavian trend. There are plenty of cultures around the world that would do something similar to this, but Vikings are the only known culture in medieval Europe to have practiced it. Now, I couldn't do this list without talking about Viking ships. I mean, remnants of Viking longboats have been found in various parts of Europe, and what an incredible feeling it would be to discover one of these things. Incredibly cool, but undeniably eerie at the same time. I mean, these ships crossed vast expanses of water carrying fierce warriors who completely changed the course of history in Europe. If there really are curses or dark forces that linger and latch themselves onto ancient artifacts, I mean, I think Viking ships are most definitely on that list. And the same goes for their weapons. I'm not quite sure what would be cooler to find. A longboat, a piece of Viking armor, or a weapon. I like swords, so I'm gonna go with a weapon, but let me know what you'd want to find down in the comments. Cursed swords and axes are pretty prevalent in Viking mythology, but again, if cursed objects really are a thing, pretty safe to say that these weapons that took the lives of so many unfortunate souls during Viking raids probably have some dark energy lingering on them of some kind. Again, if you believe in that sort of thing. And we're finishing off today's list with Naglfar, the ship of the dead. So in Norse mythology, Naglfar is this massive ship made entirely from the fingernails and toenails of the dead, which is pretty metal. Naglfar is said to be destined for a pretty ominous purpose. During Ragnarok, which is basically the end of the world in Norse beliefs, Naglfar is supposed to set sail. It's helmed by the giants, who are the enemies of the gods, and when Naglfar sails during Ragnarok, it's a sign that things are about to get very chaotic and apocalyptic. The idea of a ship made from nails might sound pretty strange, but in Norse mythology it's all about symbolism and just dramatic imagery. Naglfar represents this looming threat, this unstoppable force that signals the coming of Ragnarok and the ultimate showdown between the forces of good and the forces of evil. But a ship made of the fingers and toenails of the dead that sets sail at the coming of the apocalypse, that's about as cursed as it gets, I think.
At number 10, we have the Sintamani Stone. This is like a genie lamp, but way better. There are no limits to the amount of wishes you can pull out of this thing. The Sintamani Stone is said to be an artifact of great power that will grant wishes to the person who holds it. The original owner and wielder of this power was the Buddha, which in a way is a perfect match because you know he's not going to do anything evil with it, but it also seems like kind of a waste. Like a dude who has no need for material possessions has the power to wish for anything? Like, what are you going to ask for, dude? The stone has been depicted through many Southeast Asian cultures like Hinduism, and some people think that the stone could be the equivalent to the Philosopher's Stone, to giving the owner health and potentially immortal life. Now I understand why Indiana Jones is always digging around for these things. This sounds like it would be a pretty good time. At number 9, we have Ark of the Covenant, a big old box that has some of the most sacred religious texts hidden inside them. This is considered one of the biggest lost artifacts in human history. The Ark of the Covenant is supposed to hold the original tablets of the 10 Commandments. The Word of God is chiseled into the stone about how you should live your life, and there's some pretty good rules on them, like don't covet your neighbor's ox. Dude, if it wasn't for those tablets, I would be stealing oxes left, right, and center. I would be known as the North American ox thief, and I would have a stockpile of oxes that would take the world by storm. But thanks to the Babylonians conquering Jerusalem, the Ark was lost, and we have no idea where those texts are now. What would happen if we found them? Well, if we continue to follow the Indiana Jones rules, it would be something like this. Heads just exploding all over the place. At number 8, we have the 7 League Boots. If you really went digging around in these old artifacts, you could pull up some pretty cool stuff and become a superhero that has all these trinkets all over them. You would look stylish and you could save the day, and that's the best way to do it, looking good while you're saving the day. Oh my god, great. The 7 League Boots would be such a hot look that Nike would come up with their own version. The 7 League Boots are supposed to give the person wearing them the ability to travel 7 leagues in a single step. That's good, but nobody knows how long 7 leagues is. Are you kidding me? I am actually just kidding you guys. It's like 5 kilometers. This is a very good power. You could travel on such a small budget. You wouldn't have to worry about buying plane tickets. You could just run as far as you want and end up in a new country, and then maybe put something in the bottom so you could step on water, so you could run across the ocean and go to Europe. That would be great. Or come over here, however you want to do it. At number 7, we have the Staff of the Monkey King. If you have never read the book Journey to the West, then you need to get on that now. It is the foundation of most modern storytelling. Dragon Ball took so much from this book that's hard not to see the direct comparison. The book takes from ancient Chinese tales, and one of the main characters is the Monkey King. He has a magical staff that has the ability to stretch great distance or even shrink down to the size of a pin. It has a great weapon for whooping someone from a distance. It could stretch out and slap them in the face and then shrink down and be like, hey, that wasn't even me. I didn't even do anything. I don't know what you're talking about. At number 6, we have the Helm of Invisibility. Greek mythology has a ton of magical artifacts that have been lost to man. Maybe some of them never existed, or maybe some of them were destroyed, or maybe some of them are in a giant vault underneath the White House and every president gets to just have fun with them and put them on. That would be so unfair. Well, the Helm of Invisibility is one of the main weapons in the arsenal of the great hero Perseus. He was the dude sent on one of the original fetch quests. One of the items he needed was the head of the Gorgon queen Medusa, but anyone who looks at her gets turned to stone. So Perseus put on the Helm of Invisibility so he could get close enough to her to cut her head off, and guess what? It worked. So this thing doesn't only let you turn invisible, but it also withstands the horrible gaze of a bloodthirsty Gorgon. This is a 2-for-1. Number 5, we have Excalibur, the sword in the stone that is one of the most powerful weapons known to man. Well, in its time when people were writing about this magical weapon, like this is before nukes. Like I don't know if the sword can beat a nuke, I don't know. But it said that the person who has this sword is the true King of England and part of the royal bloodline. In some depictions, the sword has some sort of magical powers. There have been all sorts of powers attached to this blade, but some of the more popular abilities is the ability to cut through any stone in a single swipe. The power to kill anything, and I mean anything, like it could be a magical creature, supernatural creature, cosmic, you could kill anything with the sword. In theory, the blade could cut through Cthulhu, that's pretty nuts. But one of the most important abilities is the person wielding the sword can recover from any wounds. We are building a very powerful arsenal of magical weapons on this list. At number 4, we have the Club of Dagda. This is the weapon of a god that could bring almost any change he wanted. Dagda is a Celtic god, and he was the representation of male strength, and he had control of almost every aspect of life. He could kill anything he wanted and then bring it back to life. He could control time, weather, and even bring great famine or plentiful harvest. This dude would give Thor a run for his money. A fight between these two would be a pay-per-view I would definitely pay for. I wouldn't just steal it from a streaming site, like I'd actually give them my money. This club is said to be the item that holds the key to life and death, with the blunt end sending people to the grave, but then the handle being able to resurrect them. At number 3, we have the Cup of Jamshid. Pulled from Persian mythology, it's said that the potion that lays inside this cup brings the person who drinks it immortality. Some people believe that the most successful conquests of the Persian Empire came from someone who had this cup in their possession in secret. And the cup wouldn't only give you the ability to live forever, but also anyone who looked into it would see through all space. You could see all over the world and through the 7 heavens. You would get true sight, and you could also live forever. You would become the smartest person who has ever lived. At number 2, we have the Book of Thoth. The ancient Egyptians had a rich mythology that we don't often see represented in film and television, but throughout it there were some godly weapons. The Book of Thoth was written by the god of knowledge himself. He gave the book to humanity in a way to enrich their lives. It would teach the reader how to communicate with anything. They would be able to talk to animals, insects, humans, and even the gods themselves. But it is a human way to misuse things, so Thoth put a curse on the book. Prince Neferkaptah was in possession of the book, but it cursed him and all of his closest family members to die. Later, he was buried with this treasure. At number 1, we have the Spear of Destiny. Now, one of the most powerful weapons in the Bible, and if the stories are true, it would make sense that this thing is supercharged with godly abilities. The Spear of Destiny is said to be the spear that sent Jesus to the grave. If you kill the Son of God, there are going to be some ripple effects. Some of Jesus' godly power leaked onto the spear. This supercharged it, and it gave the person holding it the ability to move the world in any direction they see fit. There are rumors throughout history that great rulers were in possession of this spear. Some say Genghis Khan had it in his conquest, and that's how he was able to take over so much of the world. Other people believe that Hitler found the spear right before he launched his attacks on Europe. The idea of Hitler having the spear does hold a little bit of water because he was someone who was very interested in magical artifacts. He would send out task force in search of some of the world's lost mythical items to give him power, and maybe it was the spear that gave him guidance to take over a lot of Europe.
Coming in at number 10 is underwater arrowheads. In 2005, hundreds of arrowheads and tools, some 8,000 years old, were discovered along the Mercy River near Kudjimikujik National Park in the southwest region of Nova Scotia. Workers from Nova Scotia Power were doing repairs to generating stations on the river. As the water levels dropped in some areas, the riverbed was exposed for the first time since the dams were built 70 years ago. Due to this, hundreds of artifacts appeared in the mud. The quantity of the material, the quality of the material, the age range represented by the material, all is just fascinating for us, said archaeologist Bruce Stewart, who was hired to investigate. Pottery fragments, spear points, knives, and other items were found around 109 ancient campsites. One barbed harpoon was once used to spear salmon and eels 3,000 years ago, Stewart said. The discovery was kept a secret until the artifacts were sent to the Nova Scotia Museum once Stewart and his team finished sorting them. Number 9. $150 million of lost silver. At the bottom of the Atlantic for more than a century, a 150-year-old steamship had been found in 2003. The ship is the Republic, which sailed from New York in 1865, just after the Civil War, carrying 59 passengers and crew and a mixed cargo meant to help New Orleans recover from the war. About 100 miles off Georgia, battling a hurricane, it sank in waters 1/3
of a mile deep. Now, its cargo of lost coins, experts say, may now be worth up to $150 million. That would make it one of history's richest treasure wrecks. It's a dream come true, said Dr. Donald H. Kagan, an expert on 19th century coins, who is advising the company that discovered the wreck. The company, Odyssey Marine Exploration of Tampa, Florida, who announced the find, said it hoped to retrieve all the coins. The company has retrieved more than 1,600 gold and silver coins, and none are dated later than 1865, tending to confirm the wreck's identity, said Greg Stem, the company's director of operations. For some reason, even the silver coins are in great condition. Part of it is surely the physical environment down there, he said. The icy deep explorers are finding can often preserve objects, even precious metals like silver, that normally corrode easily. This is incredible, as it's like finding real treasure. Number 8. The 2,400-year-old boat in the Black Sea. Archaeologists working with engineers from the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project, MAP, have discovered a 23-meter shipwreck that laid undisturbed for more than 2,400 years. The find is believed to be the oldest intact shipwreck ever discovered. Thanks to lack of oxygen in the Black Sea, and the fact that it was discovered a mile below the surface means it is exceptionally well preserved. The 75-foot vessel is thought to be ancient Greek, and it still has its mast, rudders, and rowing benches. Speaking to The Guardian professor John Adams, the principal investigator with MAP explained, a ship surviving intact from the classical world lying over 2 kilometers of water is something I would never have believed possible, and it will change our understanding of shipbuilding and seafaring in the ancient world. The ship is thought to be a trading vessel, however, up to now, the design has only been seen on the sides of ancient Greek pottery. This find is an archaeological first. The team have left the vessel untouched, apart from a small sample that was used to carbon date it by the University of Southampton. Number 7. Egyptian cities. Artifacts from ancient Egyptian cities preserved for thousands of years at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea went on display in Paris in 2015. The exhibit at the Arab World Institute in the French capital featured 250 artifacts from a pair of ancient cities discovered in the year 2000. It took 7 years of underwater excavation to retrieve the artifacts from a 40 square mile area of the Mediterranean Sea near Alexandria, Egypt. The objects, covered in sediment and partially protected by the sea, date back 2,800 years. According to archaeologists, the cities ended up at the bottom of the sea after years of natural disasters, including earthquakes and landslides. Many of the artifacts are believed to be tributes to the ancient Egyptian god Osiris. Number 6. First ancient naval battle. In November 2013, archaeologists announced the recovery of a treasure trove of artifacts off the coast of Sicily from the site of the first ancient naval battle ever discovered, including battering rams, helmets, armor, and weapons dating back 2,000 years. They are the remnants of the Battle of Edgei Islands, the last clash from the First Punic War, which took place in 241 BC, in which the Romans fought the Carthaginians in a battle that culminated from more than 20 years of warring as the Romans struggled to gain a foothold in the Mediterranean Sea. While the Carthaginians were much more powerful on the water, the Romans taped them and blocked off their sea route in a sudden attack. Up to 50 of these ships were sunk, which resulted in about 10,000 men perishing at sea. The ships and their artifacts had laid undisturbed on the seabed at a depth of 100 meters for more than 2 millennia. Number 5. Medicinal pills. In June 2013, a team of Italian scientists conducted a chemical analysis on some ancient Roman medicinal pills discovered in the Roletto di Ponzio, a 2,000-year-old submerged shipping vessel which sank off the coast of Tuscany, revealing what exactly the ancient Romans used as medicine. The Roletto del Ponzio was excavated by the Archaeological Superintendency of Tuscany throughout the 1980s and 90s, revealing a variety of fascinating cargo, including lamps originating in Asia, Syrian Palestinian glass bowls, bronze jugs, ceramic vessels for carrying wine, and the remains of a medicine chest containing a surgery hook, a mortar, 136 wooden drug vials, and several cylindrical tin vessels, one of which contained 5 circular medicinal tablets. The tin vessels had remained completely sealed, which kept the pills dry, proving an amazing opportunity to find out exactly what substances were contained within them. The results revealed that the pills contained a number of zinc compounds, as well as iron oxide, starch, beeswax, beeswax, pine resin, and other plant-derived materials. Based on their shape and composition, scientists have suggested that the tablets were used as a type of eye medicine. Number 4. 5,000-year-old city. In the Peloponnesus region of southern Greece, there is a small village called Pavlopetri where a nearby ancient city dating back 5,000 years resides. The city can be found about 4 meters underwater, and it is believed to be the oldest known submerged city in the world. The city is incredibly well designed with roads, 2-story houses with gardens, temples, a cemetery, and a complex water management system including channels and water pipes. In the center of the city was a square or plaza measuring about 40 by 20 meters, and most of the buildings have been found with up to 12 rooms inside. The design of this city surpasses the design of many cities today. Now, research in 2009 revealed that the site extends for about 9 acres, and evidence shows that it had been inhabited prior to 2800 BC. Scientists estimate that the city was sunk in around 1000 BC due to earthquakes that shifted the land. However, despite this, and even after 5,000 years, the arrangement of the city is still clearly visible, and at least 15 buildings have been found. The city's arrangement is so clear that the head of the archaeological team, John Henderson, of the University of Nottingham, and his team have been able to create what they believe is an extremely accurate 3D reconstruction of the city. Number 3. 900-year-old sword. In October 2021, Shlomi Katzin, a resident of Atil, Israel, was scuba diving when he discovered several ancient artifacts in a Carmel Coast seabed, including a 900-year-old iron sword. He handed over the sword with its 3-foot blade and 2-foot hilt covered in marine organisms to the Israel Antiquities Authority. The sword, which was kept in perfect condition, is a beautiful and rare find, and it seems to belong to a Crusader knight. Near Dessefeld, inspector for the Israel Antiquities Authority Robbery Prevention Unit, said in a statement on the organization's Facebook page. The area where the sword was found contains coves that once served as a shelter for ships and where large cities such as Atlit sprang up. These conditions have attracted merchant ships down the ages, leaving behind rich archaeological finds, said Kobe Sharvit, director of Israel Antiquities Authority's Marine Archaeology Unit. Ocean waves and currents driven by storms likely shifted the sand on the seabed to reveal its items found by Kidzin, which also included anchors and pottery fragments. Number 2. The Malachite Man. A 2,000-year-old human skeleton was found when a group of divers ventured into a submerged cave known as Hoyo Negro. There, they encountered the remarkably preserved remains of a man dating back to 13,000 years ago. Named the Malachite Man after the green mineral deposits encasing him, his skeleton lays in pristine condition. Now, this ancient individual may be one of the earliest known victims of a rising sea level due to climate change. His extraordinary preservation, along with the findings of extinct animal remains in the same cave, has led to groundbreaking revelations about prehistoric life and the dramatic changes our planet has undergone. And coming at number 1 is 3,200-year-old boat wreck. Marine archaeologist and researcher at the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique, CNRNS in France, Julia Bodo, announced the incredible discovery of a boat wreck in Zambratia Cove, Croatia, which was just dated to 1200 BC. The unique and rare find is a Bronze Age sewn boat, a type of wooden boat which is literally sewn together using ropes, roots, or willow branches. The boat measures 7 meters in length and 2.5 meters in width. The remains of the boat found are incredibly well preserved for its age, with stitching still visible in some areas and the frame largely undamaged. The different types of wood to construct it have been identified as elm, alder, and fir, and tree ring dating is currently underway, which will provide the date the tree was cut to the nearest year. The group have said they hope to finalize a 3D model of the boat and eventually a complete reconstruction.
We are starting off today with one of the most recent discoveries, and that is the fact that Louisiana's coastal wetlands are in deep trouble, according to a new study from Tulane University, which reveals a rapid rise in sea levels that's expected to wipe out 3/4 of these natural hurricane barriers within decades. Published in Nature Communications, the study shows that Louisiana has seen a kind of sea level surge in the past 13 years that we didn't expect to see until much later this century. As a result, nearly all of the state's coastal wetland sites are struggling to keep up, with about 90% of them drowning under the rising tides faster than they can grow. This spells trouble for Louisiana, which has already lost over 2,000 square miles of wetlands since 1932, making cities like New Orleans even more vulnerable to storms. Despite massive restoration efforts and billion-dollar projects to save them, the future looks very bleak for these crucial ecosystems that buffer storms, attract tourists, and provide habitats for wildlife. As the seas continue to rise, the study warns of a quote ecosystem collapse that could decimate these vital areas by 2070. Next up, we are talking about an ancient lost city. George Gela, a retired architect turned amateur archaeologist, has a wild theory about a bunch of granite stones found by fishermen near Louisiana's uninhabited Chandelier Islands, 50 miles east of New Orleans. He believes these stones are actually part of a 12,000-year-old lost city predating ancient civilizations like the Inca, Maya, and Aztec. After 44 visits to the site, Gela is convinced he's found the remains of a submerged city he calls Crescentis, complete with a pyramid that he claims is connected to the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. Local fishermen have long pulled up strange, square rocks from the area, but granite isn't native to Louisiana or Mississippi, stirring curiosity and speculation. Gela, who has studied the site for nearly 50 years, even has underwater sonar images that he says show clear ruins, including a massive pyramid. Adding to the mystery, he reports a bizarre amount of electromagnetic energy around the pyramid, echoing tales of compasses going haywire, similar to the Bermuda Triangle. Though it kind of sounds like a plot from an adventure novel, many are of course skeptical of Gela's claims. Alternative explanations suggest the granite could be from old shipwrecks or dumped construction materials, and despite the skepticism, Gela's romantic vision of an ancient, hidden city captivates the imagination, but without any concrete proof, this lost city remains a mystery. Next up, we are talking about some ancient artifacts. In the deep woods of west central Louisiana, archaeologists have embarked on a delicate mission at a site in Vernon Parish within the Kisatchie National Forest. Here, they are unearthing stone tools, spear points, and pottery dating back 12,000 years, revealing a timeline of human activity up to the point of European contact. Discovered in 2003, the site was only recently exposed more widely due to hurricanes and looters, making the work of preservation even more urgent. Using hurricane relief funds, teams are now diligently working to protect this window into prehistoric life before it's further damaged or pilfered. Amidst the backdrop of hurricanes Laura and Delta, which uprooted trees and disturbed the soil, these archaeologists are racing against time to save and study these valuable artifacts, piecing together the rich history of the area's ancient inhabitants. Moving on down our list, we are talking about a skull piece. Okay, it truly doesn't get more mysterious than that. Back in 1985, a fragment of a human skull turned up near Lake Pontchartrain on the outskirts of New Orleans. Initially, all that the coroner could deduce was that it belonged to a woman aged between 25 and 35. Despite the efforts, the age of the bone remained a mystery due to the limitations of technology at that time. The bone languished unidentified for years, with a 2009 DNA test proving inconclusive, lacking enough DNA to match any records. It wasn't until the bone was re-examined with carbon-14 dating at a Florida lab that the true antiquity of the find was revealed. It dated back to between 1504 and 1634 BC, placing the woman in the late Archaic period, contemporary with inhabitants of the famed Poverty Point. More on that later. This startling revelation identified her as indigenous, likely from the same era and region as those at Poverty Point, one of the most significant archaeological sites in the US from that period. Following the discovery, the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office engaged with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, consulting with the Choctaw Nation and United Huma Nation to respect and honor the life of this ancient woman. As Coroner Charles Preston aptly remarked, quote, "No coroner's case is ever closed." Speaking of Poverty Point, I just, gave it a good shout out in that one. What is this place? Well, Poverty Point, now a celebrated UNESCO World Heritage Site, truly stands out as one of Louisiana's archaeological crown jewels. So imagine this. Over 3,000 years ago, long before skyscrapers and smartphones, a pre-Columbian indigenous culture was busy crafting massive earthen mounds with nothing more than tools made from bone and stone. These mounds aren't just heaps of dirt, they are geometric marvels, laid out with incredible precision that could be daunting even with today's technology. The sheer scale and complexity of these structures hint at an advanced society that knew a thing or two about engineering and organization. What's even more fascinating is the mystery shrouding their origins. We're still piecing together how and why these ancient people built such monumental structures, making Poverty Point not only a testament to human ingenuity, but also a puzzle from the deep past. It's a breathtaking reminder of what ancient civilizations were capable of, and honestly, it is as mystifying as it is impressive. Next up, we're talking about an ancient bacteria. So imagine a bacterium so ancient it's been snoozing under a lake in Louisiana for millions of years, only to be rudely awakened during a drilling mishap. This isn't the start of a sci-fi movie, but a very real discovery under Lake Peigneur. Back in 1980, an oil rig, drilling blissfully, punched right through into a salt mine below the lake. This colossal blunder didn't just give engineers a bad day at the office, it also created a spectacular whirlpool that drained the lake like a bathtub, and then inadvertently stirred this age-old microbe from its slumber. This tiny organism, newly introduced to science, might just rewrite parts of what we know about life's resilience. The lake, once famous for its fishing and calm waters, is now a hotspot for those keen on the mysteries lurking in its depths. Isn't nature just full of surprises? I love that. Next up, we were talking about a lagoon creature. Okay, would it really be a list of mysterious discoveries without some weird creature lurking out there? The mystery of the New Orleans City Park has everyone talking. So one day, a woman named Kim and her kids are meandering through the sculpture garden when bam, they spot something slithering in the lagoon. It's not just your average fish story. This thing is serpent-like with scales and a flashy red tail that's making quite the scene just hanging out on the water's surface. Kim, who runs the preschool Early Partners, is so intrigued that she's turned it into a project, hunting through sea creatures books and coming up empty. Could this be the Loch Ness Monster's cousin chilling in New Orleans? I don't know. Everyone's got a theory. Internet sleuths are whispering about genetically modified carp, but who knows at this point. The park officials are now on the case, hoping to shed some light on the mysterious aquatic friend with help from experts. So, is it a freaky fish, a misplaced sea serpent, or something else entirely? Next up, we are talking about an ancient cypress forest. Imagine a world where massive woolly mammoths and towering saber-toothed tigers roamed. A scene right out of the Ice Age, set about 18,000 to 80,000 years ago. Back then, the Gulf Coast was a bit cooler, kind of like how Missouri or North Carolina feels today. As the sea levels dipped, more land popped up along the continental shelf, and that's when the bald cypress trees took root in what is now the northern Gulf of Mexico. But then something dramatic happened that wiped out and buried these forests under layers of earth. Fast forward to 2004 when Hurricane Ivan stormed through, uncovering these ancient waterlogged woods. Christine DeLong, a marine geologist and paleoclimatologist at LSU, got her hands on these submerged trees about 8 miles offshore, buried under 60 feet of water. Back in the lab, they tried radiocarbon dating the wood, but it was so old that they had to use alternative methods, finding that the forest dated back to the early stretches of the last ice age, between 42,000 and 74,000 years old. The climate back then was chillier, not just cooling gradually, but in abrupt drops that seemed to sync with sea level changes. In their 2015 and 2016 expeditions, DeLong's team also dug up 18 sediment cores from around the underwater forest site, unearthing not just sand and seashells, but also dark organic peat complete with roots and leaves and even seeds from plants like St. John's wort and rose mallow plants that normally belong on land and not under the sea. This peculiar finding hints at how these forests could have been swiftly submerged, perhaps by rising sea levels or a sudden influx of water from melting ice sheets, burying everything in sediment. This discovery isn't just a peek into a prehistoric world, it suggests that other ancient underwater cypress forests might be hiding along the Gulf Coast, preserved in time, waiting to tell us more about the planet's past climate shifts. Next on our list, we are talking about the Manchac Swamp Ghost. The Manchac Swamp in Louisiana is steeped in a spine-tingling legend that mixes history with a touch of the supernatural. The tale centers around Julia Brown, a voodoo priestess known to the local community. It's said that on her deathbed in 1915, she foretold doom for the town with a haunting song that predicted its demise. True enough, on the day of her funeral, a devastating hurricane swept through, obliterating the town and reinforcing the curse's chilling prophecy. This eerie coincidence has shrouded Manchac Swamp in a ghostly aura ever since. Even more intriguing, the swamp occasionally yields relics from that fateful day, bits and pieces of the past that float up from the depths, keeping the story of Julia Brown alive and adding an irresistible layer of mystery to the swamp's already foggy waters. So whether it's the lure of ghost stories or just the thrill of a good old-fashioned mystery, Manchac Swamp holds a special place in the lore of Louisiana's wetlands. And finally on our list today we have the Tunica treasure mounds. Constructed centuries ago by the Tunica Biloxi tribe, these mounds aren't just piles of earth, they are monumental achievements of architecture and engineering. The Tunica people managed to create these earthworks for ceremonial and burial purposes without any of the modern technology we take for granted today. No bulldozers, no cranes, just human hands and an intimate knowledge of the land. Digging into these mounds, archaeologists have unearthed a treasure trove of artifacts that would make any history buff's heart skip a beat. We're talking about pottery that could rival any modern art, tools crafted with such precision they're almost surgical, and jewelry that shows a level of craftsmanship that is seriously impressive. These finds are not just cool old things, they give us a sneak peek into the daily life and spiritual practices of the Tunica people, showcasing their high skill levels and deep cultural significance. What's even more amazing, perhaps the most amazing, is that there's still so much mystery shrouding these mounds. Each excavation can potentially reveal new secrets, offering more clues about how the early inhabitants of Louisiana lived and what these mounds meant to them. It's a puzzle that's far from complete, and that's what makes the Tunica treasure mounds not just fascinating, but also a little bit magical. Who knows what discoveries await around the next shovel of earth.
Number 10. The Dendera Lights. When was the first light bulb invented? Well, it was way after the Common Era calendar started, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe the ancient Egyptians had some hookups for light bulbs and they used to throw dope raves. The Hathor Temple in Dendera, Egypt has carvings in the wall which look like gigantic light bulbs. The Egyptians may have found a way to harness some sort of energy to make light bulbs. If we're gonna go super conspiracy theory, which we are, some people believe that the pyramids were actually power plants with copper wires inside of them. They used them to tap into the natural electrical energy floating around the atmosphere, pull it down into the earth, and send it into surrounding cities. If this is true, my Egyptian rave theory is not that far off. Number 9. Robots? We barely have robots now, and you're telling me that before they had toilet paper, they were making robots? Well, not that high tech, but it's still pretty cool. In ancient Greece, Philion of Byzantium made a working maid. The way this contraption worked, it was a statue with moving parts. It was perfectly weighted with a pitcher in one hand and the other hand was open. When you placed a cup in the open hand, it would shift the weight of the statue, causing it to move and pour the pitcher into the cup. Basically the best bartender ever. He'll never cut you off. This was one of the only artifacts like this, so it's most likely that robots weren't commonplace back then. It was probably only the super rich ancient Greeks that could afford it. This robot was the 8K TV of its day. Number 8. Turkish gilding. Over 8,000 years ago, the Turks were balling. They were putting gold on everything. They put gold on your house, gold on your chairs, gold on your baby. I don't know if that last one is true, but it was 8,000 years ago. I'm sure someone had to try. Who wouldn't want to put gold on a baby? That'd be dope. You have a golden baby. The Turks would use mercury to perfect this gilding process, and they were so good at it that we still haven't figured out how to do it to this day. It's 8,000 years later, and with all the technological advancements we have now, we still can't find out exactly how they did it. Maybe it was aliens. Maybe the alien version of Bobby Shmurda came down and helped them put gold on everything. Number 7. Lunar Tack Disc. When you think of Vikings, you think of pillagers, murderers, pointy hats. But they were also some of the best sailors alive. They were kings of navigating the sea, pulling up on some foreign shore and cutting everyone's head off. So it shouldn't be a huge surprise that they might have been the first civilization to discover a compass. The lunar tack disc was discovered in Greenland in 1984. It's believed that the Vikings would use these devices at night when they couldn't use the sun to navigate. It's not certain how these devices would work, but it seems they would give the user a rough idea of where the sun would be in the sky after it was set. The lunar tack disc would work in parts with other things like wooden slabs and crystals. I never thought bloodthirsty Vikings would be into crystals. You come home after a long day of mass murder and your wife's like, whoa, your chakras are all over the place. Number 6, the bell. I don't know if you know this, but coal takes at least 30 million years to form. That's why this next one is pretty interesting. This one is a brass bell which was discovered encased in a chunk of coal. The coal that the bell was encased in was over 300 million years old, and the mine that the bell was found in was over 100 feet deep. The bell also had carvings which were similar to the Hindu god Garuda, but the bell was discovered in West Virginia. How did a brass bell with Hindu god carvings encased in 300 million year old coal end up in West Virginia? These are so many questions, but it might be signs of advanced civilizations existing in North America way before we think. Number 5. The Puri-Reis map. Cartography is pretty easy now that we have satellites. We can see the whole world from space and just take a picture and then print out the picture. But then the printer's like, I can't print it, I'm out of color. And you're like, whatever, just print in black and white. And he's like, nah, I need more magenta. And you're like, I said black and white. Believe it or not, making maps was even harder back then. The Puri-Reis map was discovered in 1929 by Gustav Adolf Deismann, and it was an absolute marvel. The map depicted a very detailed charting of Antarctica before it was covered with ice. It was made by cartographer Haji Ahmed Muhyiddin Puri. The map is so incredibly detailed that it puzzled the archaeologists that found it. Who was able to make something this detailed without some sort of advanced technology? Also, we can't compare it to what Antarctica would look like because it's now covered in ice. So we'll just have to wait to find out if it's actually accurate. Number 4. The London Hammer. This isn't some bad 80s hair metal band. This is the discovery of one of the oldest dated tools ever. The London Hammer was discovered by a couple who went out for a walk, and they saw a chunk of wood coming out of a rock. They thought it looked interesting enough, so they took it home. Later, their son decided to take a hammer and chisel to it and break into it. Inside, he found what looked like a crude design of a hammer. They took the hammer to some archaeologists, and this is where things get crazy. The rock encasing the hammer dates back 400 million years, and the iron used to make the hammer's head is over 500 million years old. The hammer's head is over 90% pure iron, so there's no way this could have happened naturally in nature. Parts of the hammer's handle have been turned to coal, which means the hammer itself is at least 30 million years old, because the coal takes at least 30 million years to form. My guess is someone jumped into a time machine and got stuck way back. Never be the first guy to go into a time machine, wait until they work out the kinks. Number 3. The Coso Artifact. In 1961, a group of hikers was going rock collecting somewhere in the California mountains. These guys were super cool dudes. They came across some geodes, which are crystals encased in rock. They took them home to cut into them to see what kind of crystals would be inside. What they found was more than just crystals, but a porcelain casing, a spring, and some metal parts encased inside the rock. The pieces all resembled a spark plug, but the rock was dated 5,000 years old. The craziest part about this is the Coso artifact and the 3 hikers who made the discovery have all gone missing. Super creepy. Number 2. Nuclear reactor. How old would you think the first ever nuclear reactor is? If I told you it was 10,000 years old, you probably wouldn't believe me. Well, this nuclear reactor, discovered in Gabon, Africa, is actually way older than that. In 1972, a team of archaeologists dug up a 1.8 million year old nuclear reactor. They were able to determine the age through carbon dating, and from the design, it seems like it was man-made. This is one of the craziest discoveries ever recorded. Some people think that it was a meteor that crashed into the Earth and just left back some nuclear energy, but other people think that it was aliens who came here to bioengineer humans and create new life, and then study it from a distant planet. I don't know, and maybe everyone's wrong. Maybe some people are right. I don't know. Number 1, spheres. If you find one naturally occurring anomaly, you can chalk it up to chance. But if you find over 200 in the same place over a 30-year period, then I guess there might be something going on. Metallic spheres started popping up in a mine in South Africa in the 1970s. There were metal on the outside with some line markings that go down the center. They range from sizes of 2.5 centimeters to 10 centimeters. If you break into them, they seem to have some sort of soft material in them that breaks down when it comes in contact with the air. So far it's not that crazy. But these spheres are dated back 2.8 billion years. Before dinos. Before almost anything. How could you have something that's clearly crafted dated so old? Obviously, I don't have the answer, but we can speculate. Time travel? Aliens? Maybe this is human beings' second run at life. Maybe there's been civilizations that have lived on this planet before, and we're just another group taking a shot at life.
Want to see more videos like this one? How about you check out this video right here? It's part 1 to this series, and we'll give you even more crazy artifacts found throughout history that will blow your mind. Click the video now to find out more.